Desperate times on Mandalore. Having won neutrality for the Mandalorian system, Duchess Satine now finds herself an outsider with little aid to her people. Supplies are impossible to come by, except on the black market. As a result, the Duchess faces a world consumed by greed. Hoping to alleviate some of the tensions rising in the capital city of Sundari, Satine has called upon her friend Padme Amidala to make a diplomatic visit.
Greetings, Bucketheads. Maybar Tigar. Welcome to the 107th Toxic Tea Tasting episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for tuning in, checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We are so happy that you're here. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, via social media. We are on the Twitters and the Instagrams. Find us at Mando_Vision. You can also email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're doing all those things that we like. Liking, subscribing, and sharing this show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. We truly appreciate it. That is a wonderful thing when you share the show with others. So thank you in advance. You're awesome. And if you're doing that Apple Podcast thing, 5-star reviews are insanely helpful. They highlight the show. They promote. They get the word out. They defeat, or at least, maybe a nice throat punch to the algorithm. And that is all we can ask of each other, is to give the algorithm a nice throat punch on occasion. So, how is everyone? I hope you all had a nice weekend. We're back. It's Star Wars The Clone Wars Rewatch Mondays. And yeah, so Disney Plus Day kind of came and went with nary a Star Wars announcement in sight, or new trailers or anything like that. Nothing to wet our Star Wars whistles necessarily. I think by this point, though, we have all seen the released concept art for the Obi-Wan series, and that was exciting to look at. Some really neat stuff in there. Obviously, you get to see some Vader stuff. Obi-Wan riding on, I think he's on an Eopie in that piece of concept art. Some really neat stuff in there to kind of get us excited, even though it does seem like we are still a ways out from the Kenobi series debuting on Disney Plus. But that's okay. Just more things to look forward to. We got to be careful. We live in this glorious golden age of Star Wars now, where we're gonna have so much Star Wars coming at us that we can't risk getting spoiled and doing that thing where we do the demands. We make demands of companies that are not going to do anything for us. I mean, listen, they're going to give us the content. We just have to be patient. We have to be patient and not pound our fists on the table like, no, we need the Kenobi trailer now. We're not doing that. We are professional fans. We know how to behave ourselves. We have been out in public before. So let's all stay cool. We will get that trailer when the time is right. And again, let's not look too far ahead. We all get really excited about what's coming down the pipe, but think about what's right in front of your face right now. Well, not right now just yet, but I mean, Book of Boba Fett, again, that is it's so real that you can reach out and touch it with your hands. That's how close that show is to us right now. We just have to reach out with our feelings and touch it. That's how close we are to the Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus. So exciting stuff, Let's not get too crazy about Kenobi and Andor and all the stuff coming down the road. We will talk about those more fully once there's things to talk about. But we did get something new on Disney Plus, and I don't think I was aware of this coming to Disney Plus. I feel like this is just one of those things that you pull up your feed and there it is, and you're like, whoa, what's this? And it is a Under the Helmet is what it's called, The Legacy of Boba Fett. So as a Buckethead, I was automatically intrigued by this. Boba Fett, the reason why this podcast basically exists. So I was excited to watch that. I enjoyed it. It's a very fast, very brisk 20-ish minutes of show to watch. Very fascinated by a lot of the stuff at the beginning, where they're talking about kind of bringing the character to life. I mean, we all know the stories, and they talk about it in the show about how originally he was going to be the super stormtrooper was sort of the idea behind the initial concept art, and then it kind of evolved. And they talk about the evolution and how it changes and what went into it, and seeing like the early costume tests and how they sort of put him into the holiday special ahead of time. And they even do this great thing where they mention this parade in Marin County, where he sort of made his unofficial public debut, and people were like, "Who the heck is that guy?" Because that's walking around this parade with Darth Vader. Really, really enjoyable. I hope you've all had a chance to check it out. I'm sure you have by now. Again, a brisk 20 minutes if you haven't watched it. Very interesting stuff, very neat stuff, and obviously it gets all into Jeremy Bullock's importance to the role, all the way to Tamara Morrison, even Daniel Logan's in the trailer or in the show. So again, I thought it was really neat. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I will probably watch it again. And at the tail end, you get a couple snippets, maybe a handful of new shots, just really brief ones from the Book of Boba Fett, to kind of again wet that whistle for what is just right in front of our face. It's almost here. So yeah, again, nothing on Disney Plus Day. That turned out to be like a big Marvel thing, basically. A lot of Marvel news came out, and we did get to see the cast. We got to meet the new cast of the new Willow show coming to Disney Plus. That's exciting. As Star Wars fans, I think we're all appreciative of Warwick Davis and what he's done for Star Wars over the years. And I'm excited about that Willow show. I'm going to check that out. So, maybe we'll talk about it here because it is tangentially associated with Star Wars because of Warwick. But whatever. We have to get into our show today because we got a big one for you. We're doing Star Wars: The Clone Wars Rewatch Mondays. And that's the name of this show. So let's do it. Season 3, Episode 5, Corruption. And yeah, we're going to do all the vitals on the other side of the bump. You know what that means. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
The Republic's own dealings with the black market far surpass Mandalore's.
I agree. It's quite hypocritical of you to come here, a member of the Republic Senate, and lecture to us about corruption.
Mandalore cannot protect
This is the price of you, Satine. The corporate alliance controls everything.
Silence! I told Senator Amidala that Mandalore was not part of the war, yet here I find a battle in my own palace. I call this meeting adjourned. We will reconvene and allow cooler heads to prevail.
All right, Bucketheads. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Season 3, Episode 5, Corruption. The original air date was October 8th, 2010. My goodness. Where were you October 8th, 2010? In front of the TV watching Star Wars: The Clone Wars on the Cartoon Network. I know that's where you were. I guarantee it. All right. Our plot for this week. We have an interesting episode this week, for sure. When Padme visits Mandalore on a diplomatic mission, she finds herself investigating an outbreak of a mysterious illness at a school with Duchess Satine. That is our very basic, generic plot for this week's episode. Directed by Giancarlo Volpe with a script by Cameron Litvak, who's been doing a lot of the early episodes here in Season 3 of the show, which is good. And for the most part, I think Cameron's been writing some really solid episodes in this season. This episode, we'll talk about some of my hang-ups with it momentarily, but it's a touch uneven for me. I'll just kind of give you that little preview of my 2 cents. All right, so you may hear some hammering in the background right now. I'm trying very hard to cut that out, or do at the very least to talk over it, but you may hear a little tap, tap, tap in the background. There's a lot going on in the Mando cave, and it's a very upsetting. The covert is having worker people in it, and it's not cool. I'm not stoked about it, but I'm trying my best to get our episode done. All right, I will not be waylaid by a worker man. All right, he's doing his thing. I'm doing my thing. We're all good. Our cast this week: Anna Graves is Satine Kryze, Catherine Tabor is Padme Amidala, Corey Burton is the Minister of Interior, Dr. Zaz and Sadiq. D. Bradley Baker is the Mugan Captain, Guard Number 1, and Superintendent. Julian Holloway is the Prime Minister Almec. Greg Baldwin is Mugan crew member and the Customs Officer. And Tom Kane is our narrator, the police captain, and the orderly voice. And the orderly. Excuse me. Of course he's the voice. They're voice actors. This is what they do. So that is our primary cast. We get a lot of familiar faces returning once again to do their business. The JFC, the Jedi Fortune Cookie for the episode. The challenge of hope is to overcome corruption. Now, we don't always get into a deeper meaning with the Jedi Fortune Cookie for the episodes, and that's because a lot of times they're pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty much on the surface there. There's not a lot of layers to pull apart with some of these. This Fortune Cookie for this week's episode, I think it's a stretch. I think it's a stretch. Again, we're going with that hope thing. I get it. We're Star Wars. We're all about hope. We're all about a new hope and the keeping hope alive in the dark times of the Empire. But I feel like this one's a stretch. Again, corruption is bad, but I don't know if and then of course there's a corruption of hope, I suppose. But again, it feels like you're really stretching that metaphor and really trying hard to sell that to me. To tie into your theme for this week's episode. So not my favorite of the fortune cookies. Again, a bit of a stretch. This week's episode in particular, and again, you may notice we're kind of reviewing these a little differently. Last week's episode, on Friday, we did a very different styled review. We're going to continue that with this week's episode too, because and with this week's episode in particular, it's a I want to choose my words carefully here. This is a fine episode in many regards. And perhaps it is my issue and my issue alone. There are some plot points in this episode that don't make a ton of sense to me. And we're going to talk about that. We're definitely going to talk about that. But I wanted to put it out there on Front Street. I want you to know right now. I got some issues with this episode. It doesn't click on all cylinders like I want it to. They're trying really hard to explore corruption in a world that has declared itself neutral during the Clone Wars. We're going back to Mandalore, one of a fan favorite location at the very least, and we're kind of picking up where we left off in last season. We're exploring more of Mandalore's neutrality and what the cost of that neutrality is. And the biggest cost is that people don't want to seemingly don't want to do business with them. They're being choked out by the Commerce Guild, and people don't want to open trade routes. Trade routes are being denied to them. So the people of Mandalore are suffering for Duchess Satine's principles of remaining neutral in a conflict that she wants no part of. And again, we support Duchess Satine and her claim of neutrality. But there's clearly a cost, and that's what we kind of get to explore in this episode, sort of the cost of neutrality in a very, very divided galaxy, where the line has been drawn and many planets are falling to one side or the other. And now Mandalore is sort of caught in the middle of day-to-day life, where politics are now affecting them. They don't want to be part of the war, but there's a consequence for that, and it is the Commerce Guild shutting them out. It is the trade routes being denied to them, trade being denied to them. So the people are suffering. There's food shortages and supply shortages, and it's actually a very interesting episode to watch in a lot of senses, because for anybody who's paying attention to the news in our world, maybe you've been hearing about the supply chain issues. All the items that the USA imports, sitting on a dock, not being able to be checked in from customs. There are not being enough workers on hand to process the materials, and things being shorted on that sense. And again, it's far more complicated than just an issue at the ports, issue at the docks. I mean, it's a nationwide thing. I think it's possibly a global issue as well. But it sort of was an interesting episode to watch in that context. When you think about these supply chain issues, like maybe you've gone to your grocery store lately and you've noticed like the price of pork is out of control, or they don't have your favorite XYZ item because it's imported from Indonesia or something like that. Again, we're not the USA has not remained neutral in anything for a long time, but this supply chain issue is a real thing, and it sort of has an interesting I don't know. It made this episode more interesting to watch, I guess, is the way I'm trying to say. It's like, oh, I kind of see some stuff going on here. I see some similarities. This whole supply chain thing that we're dealing with at the grocery stores, at the markets, at your store, who doesn't have the product you need because for whatever reason. So yeah, there's some interesting aspects of it, real world aspects of it, reflected in this episode from 11 years ago, which is kind of wild. But we get to explore that the cost of neutrality and how it's affecting the people of Mandalore, and the sort of corruption within the Mandalorian government that arises from these hard times, from these lean times, and so we get this story that comes up, and let's talk about it. Satine invites Padme out to Mandalore, trying to get things going through the proper channels, get things going with the Senate so that trade can be opened up, so that the people on Mandalore can get the food and the supplies and all the medical need, all the stuff they need, get all those things going. So Satine's doing her thing as the Duchess, right? And Padme is there, and she wants to help the people. She's okay with them being neutral, but she's one of the few. But Satine needs her to be an advocate in the Senate to make things happen, to improve the lives of their people. And again, that's all good. That's all great. I'm really fine with this part of the episode up to this point. I like exploring the ramifications of neutrality in the Clone Wars. It's interesting to me. I like it. But again, I'm one of the few people who seems to enjoy some of the more political based episodes of the show. Maybe that's just me. I know a lot of people love to lambast the prequel era for the politics and talking about trade routes and all this other stuff. And honestly, I'm okay with it because it's to me it's very interesting to see how the Republic was set up before the Empire came in and just knocked over their house of cards. So I'm okay with it personally. What I'm not okay with is sort of like this weird, ambiguous, nebulous Mugan smuggler conspiracy with T. That is where my problems with this episode lie. Not with Satine and sort of her, just soapboxing a little bit. Maybe a little bit of soapboxing from Satine in this one. But her dedication to rooting out the corruption, I understand all of that. Like, I'm good with all of that. I like a hands-on leader. I think that's really cool that she's doing all these things to help her people, but also to eliminate the corruption from her government that has sprouted in the wake of her declaration of neutrality. So let's talk about the Mugan Smugglers. If memory serves, this is our first time seeing Mugan Smugglers, for reasons that I'm never really clear on. They dress like Egyptians. So if, like me, you are a fan of the Assassin's Creed video game series and you played Origins, they look like people you did a lot of killing on in that video game. So, interesting style choices of the Mugan Smugglers. An interesting species that I don't think we get to know too much about throughout the course of the series, and even their other appearances in other various media. Like they come to mind in the Darth Maul comic. I think they showed up at least in one issue of Dr. Aphra. But a species we don't know a ton about. But they're smugglers. They show up at the docks, and again, they're sort of like there to illustrate the corruption that is occurring within the infrastructure of the Mandalorian government, as they bribe a customs official to allow this unauthorized ship to do its business, to arrive with tea, a Mugan tea, and we learn that they're gonna cut this tea. They're gonna dilute it so they can maximize their profits. But what they're doing is diluting it with a toxic substance that is making children at a school sick. This is a bottled tea, apparently readily available with the school superintendents, and they purchase it for they acquire this for the students, and they're the ones who are affected by this toxic tea, if you will. Now, one of my this is just me. I freely admit that, and listeners, longtime listeners of this podcast know, I'm not like a super smart guy. I enjoy my Star Wars. I like to deep think on my Star Wars when I can, but it doesn't mean I'm a smart guy. Like, I just like to pontificate about Star Wars when I can, and so sometimes like the vagaries of some of the plot points are interesting to me. What's interesting to me about this? Okay, so how do I put this in terms? Again, I like to keep the Star Wars podcast kind of family friendly, but let's say that like maybe I've watched a few cop shows in my time, and you come across episodes with like some drug dealers, some nefarious criminal people, and like they have a certain product that rhymes with smokeine. And to stretch that product further to maximize their profits, they will cut the smokeine, and they will like put additives into it, like baking powder or some such thing, or perhaps another toxic substance. Like I know fentanyl's a big thing right now, and I feel like in the drug world, that makes a certain amount of sense. Again, you're dealing with nefarious criminal people, and you have to be able to disguise your schmocaine, and baking soda or baking powder or crushed up aspirin, whatever. Like that looks like it's gonna work, right? Like visually, it makes a ton of sense. We're talking about tea in this episode. We're talking about tea, like TEA, tea, okay? Like the stuff you drink. I prefer it iced. Black tea is very lovely. I'm a big fan of black tea, but I always make a big picture of it iced. I like my tea cold. Not a fan of the hot beverage. Hot cocoa, yes. Hot tea, it's great, but I don't necessarily have time to sit there and wait for it to cool off to drink it. So I like iced tea. Big fan of iced tea. Black iced tea. Ooh, mwah, beautiful. Love it. So they want to dilute the tea, again, to maximize their profits, like they're Ferengis or something. That's a Star Trek reference. I know this is a Star Wars show. Apologies. Yet they choose to dilute the tea with a toxic substance. Now, I get it. In the drug world, yes, this happens all the time. This makes a ton of sense. Like the fentanyl thing that's real. That's happening. I understand. We're talking about tea. You want to dilute tea? You just put water in it. You just put water in it. I don't know what they're going for in this episode. I'm really confused, but what they have to dilute the tea with to cut the tea has to be a toxic substance. I don't get it. I would love it if someone does get it. Break it down for me. You know where to find me at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com, and break it down for me, because I was so perplexed by this tea issue. I was like, we're talking about tea. Just put more water in it. Like, no one's gonna die if you're already diluting it. Now, is the trick of the tea, the diluted tea, that you put the substance in there and you don't really taste like a lighter tea? Is that sort of what we're going for? Then don't say dilute. Okay, that's not the right word. It's a strange plot point, in my opinion. So yes, I bump up against that one, in my opinion, because I can't quite wrap my brain around it. And again, maybe I'm overthinking it. That could be a very real possibility. I'm just overthinking this plot point of this episode. And again, by and large, the episode is fine. Like, there's a lot to like in the episode. I like Duchess Satine's no-nonsense attitude. I mean, we know that about that character. I like Padme and Satine together, doing things and getting into activities to rein in corruption in the Mandalorian government. There's so much of this that I do really, really like. But the tea thing, I'm just, I'm just sort of hung up on it. So, again, if that substance is in there, because it's like, oh well, it makes it so that the tea tastes the same. I mean, I guess I get it in that regard. It just seems like a stretch. I mean, it really does. Especially, we get the line at the beginning where the Mugan smugglers are talking to the person doing the cutting or the diluting of the tea. And the one guy's like, "Well, isn't this toxic?" And he's like, and the Mugan smuggler's only like, only if your mix is off or whatever. And it's like, well, clearly it's off. And if you're not, if you are a savvy smuggler, aka drug dealer in this episode, basically, as a stand-in for drug dealing in Star Wars, maybe you should be paying attention to the ramifications of what you're doing, because it will bring unwanted attention to your illegal criminal operation. Just a thought. Just a thought. Maybe once you start seeing that there are sick children in the schools that you are supplying with your diluted / cut tea, maybe you mix up that formula a little bit more. Maybe you get that ratio a little bit tighter, a little bit leaner, a little bit tighter, and you stop having sick kids drawing attention to your illegal criminal operation. Just again, I don't run a criminal organization. I don't know how it works. Maybe I have too big of an idea, too bold of an idea for a criminal empire to give a damn about sick school children, which I feel like is one of those issues in the news where, like, oh, these kids are sick? Well, shoot. I almost slipped. That is going to bring unwanted attention into our operations. Perhaps we should fine-tune the ratio of the toxic substance we're injecting into this tea before we give it to kids. And again, the other part of the scenario that I don't understand, as my dogs go crazy in the other room, is these Mugan smugglers arrive on the planet. They arrive on Mandalore at the capital city, and they have the tea. The bottled tea's up in these crates. We see more, they're being stacked there. We see the bottles of tea, and then we see them in a vat later. So, like, they're emptying these bottles of tea into this vat and then diluting it and then refilling these bottles, right? Is that sort of what we're going with in this scenario? I think so. If, again, hit me up if I'm wrong. By all means, I want to know. So what that tells me then is that there are no safety seals on these bottles of tea to indicate that something has been tampered with, because this operation does not seem that high level, that they have like the proper equipment to reseal these bottles in a correct fashion. So I have many questions about how this Mugan smuggling / tea diluting operation is being run, and that is my biggest knock on the episode. And again, perhaps I am wrongly hung up on this one particular issue, but hung up on it I am. So it does take the episode down a notch or two for me. And again, all they had to do is provide a little bit more clarity of what was going on here. And I get it, it's Star Wars, so maybe you had to make it tea because you can't really, we had a reference to death sticks, but I don't think death sticks make much of a appearance on this series. Again, it was on the Cartoon Network. I get it. It's supposed to be kid friendly. But I grew up in the 80s, and there were still episodes of cartoons that addressed drug topics, part of like the whole Just Say No campaign of the 1980s. And I don't know, maybe Star Wars could have done with a little bit more of that. Maybe offering a anti-drug episode in Star Wars: The Clone Wars wouldn't have been a terrible idea. I could be wrong, but again, it's sort of a muddled message because we're talking about tea. We're talking about tea. And I'm kind of tired of talking about tea, unless you're going to offer me a nice glass of iced black tea, in which case I will say, yes, let's have that tea. We can sit on a porch and watch the sunset together. The binary sunsets of Tatooine with a nice glass of iced tea. Black iced tea. So delicious, so delightful. I'm taking a Tatooine with me when I get the chance. So yeah, I give the episode. This might be my lowest rated one in a while. I think it's like a 6, maybe a 6.5. And again, it's probably because I'm hung up on the tea issue. It's just kind of a weak plot point in my opinion. Like it's vague. I wish it was a little bit more defined. I like the idea. I like what we're going for. It's a decent size swing of an episode. But again, we're talking about tea. We are talking about tea. So there you go. There you have it. That is this episode. That is Corruption, Season 3, Episode 5 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, a lot of things to like in the episode. I love Satine and Padme together. I always like going back to Mandalore. I mean, there's some cool stuff with Satine's personal guard. Great, so some of the action stuff's really good. Padme gets involved in it. Satine maintains her role as a pacifist. There's a lot to enjoy in the episode. But that gosh darn tea thing really has me worked up and hung up. Maybe I watched it in a weird mind state. I don't know. But yeah, 6.5 is kind of where I fall on this one. But not for lack of trying. Let's put it that way. Again, there's a lot of stuff in here that's very interesting, and you're doing a corruption storyline with a world that has declared neutrality in the Clone Wars. Again, that's something that I like. That's kind of like something that I like to explore. That I'm glad we're not wasting our time with another episode that would explore corruption in the Galactic Senate. We all know that already. This is a much more interesting take. I don't want to say it's half baked, but it's not fully baked. All right, like it maybe needed another few minutes, or maybe turn that temperature up just a little bit higher to get this one kind of fully baked the way I wanted it to be. And again, maybe that's just my personal preference. Let me know. You know where to find me. It's at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. Please email the show, MandoVisionTom. Let me know that I'm a lunatic and I need to get off my tea thing. Stop talking about tea all the time, and we'll do that. Another reminder to please make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, remember, sweet 5-star reviews. They are the best. They help small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle. There's a million Star Wars shows, podcasts in particular, that you can be listening to, and probably are listening to because you're a Star Wars fan, so you want all the Star Wars, and I get that. But you take the time to download or stream this one, and I thank you so much for doing that. I love all the other Star Wars shows. They're fantastic, and I'm so happy to be part of this community. And I truly appreciate everyone who does take the time to reach out to me via social media or just even share the show with other people. I thank you so much. You are all a wonderful group of people, a wonderful community, and I'm so happy to be part of it. Thank you very much. We're going to be back on Friday, as I mentioned before. We not a lot going on Disney Plus Day for Star Wars, but the Kenobi concept art is pretty sweet and hints at another Obi-Wan Vader confrontation, which I think we were all excited by that possibility when it was announced that Hayden was coming back. So yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot of fertile ground to explore in that era between when between episode 3 and when Kenobi and Vader meet again on the Death Star in episode 4. A lot of stuff to get into. It's going to be fun to explore. I can't wait. I don't want to talk too much about it just yet. We'll have a big special Obi-Wan show. We will. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. And as always, it's Monday. You should have your bucket on. Just keep it on all week. We're heading into the holidays. Buckets are a safety requirement heading into the holidays. You're going to be in the grocery store. You're going to be fighting for cranberries and gravy and probably a turkey. So buckets on, my friends. All right, you all take care of each other. Stay safe, stay smart, stay a Star Wars fan. That's a new one. I don't know if that one will stick, but hey, we'll see what happens. All right, everybody. You know how this podcast ends. It only ends one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.